Hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. A lot of news to talk about today. We got the redistricting fight and the hypocrisy from those on the left. When you hear how many states do not have any Republican representation, as if Connecticut has 0 Republicans in it, you're going to be stunned to see just how far the left has gone to gerrymander so many of these states, and now they're crying foul about Texas. Just utterly ridiculous. But I think the big news today that we need to talk about is President Trump taking the bold and decisive action to federalize Washington, D.C., and not just put National Guard troops onto the streets of Washington, D.C. to try to take back that city from the thugs and bruisers that own it. He's federalizing the police force so that D.C. Metro Police will now be run by the federal government. A takeover of this. I am eager to start to learn about the details of how this is going to work. My assumption is the chief will remain in place, but he will end up reporting to those that President Trump has put in place to take over the D.C. Metro. President Trump just wrapped up a news conference about that. We will play you some clips of that today. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we tell you about my friends over at Colonial Metals Group. Look, the bottom line is when it comes to gold, it's a physical commodity, all right? There is just a certain amount of gold that you can take out of the ground. Governments cannot manipulate the price of gold, all right, other than start to buy a lot of it. And if they start to buy a lot of it, the price goes up. Well, guess what governments are doing? They're buying a lot of gold right now. Why? Because it's a safe haven for chaos. We know there's plenty of chaos throughout the world right now, which makes gold the perfect buying opportunity. Again, double-digit gains. This has been pretty steady year over year that gold continues to go up. But I would offer this up. Don't even think about the price of gold. Think about hoarding it as a portfolio protection maneuver. Colonial Metals Group can help you do this. Even take a portion of your IRA or 401k and turn it into a precious metals IRA or 401k. Freegoldguide.com is the website. Freegoldguide.com. 800-458-7356. And let me make this very clear. A lot of gold companies come to me to say, hey, Grant, will you pitch us on your program? I chose Colonial Metals Group because I believe in them and I believe in what they're doing. Freegoldguide.com/Grant. You can use the QR code on your screen there. Make sure you do this. Take the steps necessary to protect that nest egg you work so hard for. Freegoldguide.com/Grant. Let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Grant Stinchfield here. So President Trump, federalizing D.C. Now, unlike most American cities, in fact, unlike all other American cities, the federal government controls Washington, D.C. already. It is under the purview of the federal government. So President Trump is well within his rights to do this. I think the biggest news is that he's federalizing the Metro Police Department and putting his people inside to say, hey, we're going to get a hold of this city. Look what President Trump did on the border. Look how fast he took control of our southern border. You better believe President Trump is going to be able to do just that for the people of D.C., the people who live there, the people who work there, that want to be safe and secure and are tired of not feeling safe and secure in that city. So with that, this is President Trump talking about taking over D.C. today.
Our public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left city council adopted no cash bail.
Now, think about that, no cash bail. I call it no jail, no bail, meaning you're set free. You're literally taken into custody. You go before a judge. He says, we're going to set you free no matter what crime you commit. That you don't post bail. You have no incentive to show back up to court. And you certainly aren't thrown behind the clink because they got to be nice to criminals. So this is the start of his announcement. We'll get back to the no cash bail stuff.
And we're here for a very serious purpose, very serious purpose. Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
And that is what everybody wants. Now, I don't want America to look like Mexico. So as many of you get angry with me that I like to vacation in Mexico, look, I live in Texas. And if I want to go to the beach, it's an easy trip to Mexico. And the beaches are beautiful. So you know what? I can't help it, but I go to Mexico a lot on vacation, and I love it there. And I love the Mexican people, and we're treated very well when we go down there. Very different scene in Cancun. I'm not a big fan of Cancun. You have the armed military, call them the Mexican National Guard, whatever it might be, all over the place. In Cabo, not as much. It feels a little safer in Cabo than it does in Cancun with the militarized presence. I don't want America to have a militarized presence, but I'm not asking President Trump not to militarize areas that need it. I'm asking liberal leaders to start doing the job of running a city properly where criminals are then going to be afraid of you, so we don't need the National Guard to come in. So there are so many cities that could probably use exactly what President Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. Just go right up the highway to Baltimore. Baltimore is one of the biggest hellholes of all. You don't think Baltimore could use the National Guard? Of course. Detroit. There are areas of Dallas where I broadcast from would probably serve them well to have the federal government under the leadership of President Trump take over. So this is the result, and make no mistake about it, of the lack of liberal leadership, where liberals want to coddle criminals, that they want to caress bruisers and thugs rather than lock them up. And when you're caressing bruisers and thugs, they get motivated to bruise and commit thuggery. And so we have a situation where people are getting hurt, killed, maimed, robbed, raped in Washington, D.C., all because liberals don't want to enforce the law. No more. So when President Trump says he's federalizing the police, let them do their job. I believe that they are going to do an awful lot of stopping and talking. Now, there's a term called stop and frisk. I actually like it. If you're a police officer and someone's loitering and you think they're up to no good, let's stop and frisk them in a city like D.C. And if they're illegally carrying firearms, let's go after the illegal gun owners in D.C. because all the people committing crimes in D.C. are all gun owners and they all own those guns illegally. Instead, what did we see under the Biden administration and Obama administration? They would persecute you and me, lawful gun owners that are really keeping the people around them safer instead of going after the real criminals. So that's what I think President Trump means by doing his job. So then, of course, he talked about this no cash bail. I hate that phrase, no cash bail, because it can be confusing if you don't study the issue. No cash bail to me when I first heard it was like, oh, you're just going to lock the criminal up. No bail for you. Lock them up. Okay, unless you're innocent, then that's not so great. But that's not what no cash bail means. No cash bail means we're going to capture you. We're not going to put you in jail, and you don't even have to pay a bail. We're just going to let you out and hope you appear. You think that works? I call it no jail, no bail. It's the worst case of all scenarios. No jail, no bail. President Trump.
By the way, every place in the country where you have no cash bail is a disaster. That's what started the problem in New York, and they don't change it. They don't want to change it. That's what started it in Chicago. I mean, bad politicians started it, bad leadership started it, but that was the one thing that's central, no cash bail. Somebody murders somebody and they're out on no cash bail before the day is out. We're going to end that in Chicago. We're going to change the statute. I spoke with Pam and Todd and everybody. We're going to change the statute, and I'm going to have to get the Republicans to vote because the Democrats are weak on crime. Totally weak on crime.
And you know what? Some Republicans are too. So did you hear it in his voice there? We're going to do a little of the body language segment later on in the show today. I'm going to play it from the Real America's Voice show and the body language segment. If you haven't seen it, it's the best segment I do on TV. It really is, with my buddy Greg Hartley. But did you see President Trump's body language and tone of voice? It came down. We're going to have to get the Republicans on board. Meaning, oh boy, here we go again. What rhinos are going to get in my way from saving Washington, D.C., our nation's capital? Let's save it. Well, one way you save it is by getting the National Guard involved. My assumption is we'll put the National Guard out there. They'll be carrying M16s, but they will not be loaded. I don't know what good an M16 does not loaded, but this is typical for what we do. I believe they have loaded magazines that they can load in case of an emergency. But again, I know they don't want the military firing at American citizens, but D.C. is a dangerous, dangerous place.
Well, Mr. President, it's an honor to be here. And at your direction this morning, we've mobilized the D.C. National Guard. It'll be operationalized by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, through the D.C. Guard. You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week. At your direction as well, sir, there are other units we are prepared to bring in. Other National Guard units, other specialized units. They will be strong, they will be tough, and they will stand with their law enforcement partners. This is nothing new for DOD. As the president noted, at the border, we've got 10,000 troops down there who've been operating in defense cooperation areas, defense zones, where there's zero illegal crossings because of troops on strikers scanning the border. We've been protecting other people's borders for 20 years. It's about time we protect our own. And we're working with ICE and CBP. In Los Angeles, we did the same thing. Working with the California National Guard, working with ICE officers. ICE officers deserve to do their job and not be attacked. We will work alongside all D.C. police and federal law enforcement to ensure this city is safe, this city is beautiful. And as I always say about President Trump to the troops, he has their back. And my message to the National Guard and federal law enforcement in Washington is we have your back as well.
That's all members of our military wanted for so very, very long. It's all members of our law enforcement community wanted for so very, very long. You know, what is surprising, both President Trump, my buddy Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, these are like the most MAGA guys you get. Obviously, President Trump was the founder of MAGA. But Burchett and others talked about Muriel Bowser, a woman who I believe is a radical liberal who's been instrumental in kind of the destruction of Washington, D.C., but they all speak so highly of her, about what a nice lady she is. I'd love to meet Muriel Bowser because I've had a completely different perspective of the mayor, but they go out of their way to say how sweet and kind she is. Now, I guess you could be sweet and kind. I haven't met very many Democrats who are. You could be sweet and kind and just wildly wrong on your politics, wildly wrong on your policies, and still be a nice person. Most Democrats I know in Washington, D.C. are not nice people. And they're wildly wrong. And I think some of them, not all, some of them fall into the evil category, that they literally are out to destroy America. So we're going to get the National Guard in. We're going to get things under control. I will tell you, I just got an email from my friends at the White House asking me to remind people about some of the statistics here. So why don't I read you some of the statistics in Washington, D.C. about why we need to do this, and then we'll get into the redistricting plan as well. But before I do it, I want to tell you about EnergizedHealth.com. I'm back on the Energized Health program. Get this. 5 days in, I've lost 3 pounds, okay? This follows up the last time I did it. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, virtually kept the weight off. A year later, I'm starting back the Energized Health program. 3 pounds in 5-6 days, and I feel great again. And it's a very simple little twist that I do to my diet. Not a crazy diet plan that makes me suffer. Not a crazy workout plan that makes me suffer. This is a mind, body, soul approach to taking your body back, and it all starts with intracellular hydration, getting your body hydrated at the cellular level. And once you do it, it gets very easy to rehydrate those cells at a cellular level. That's where the science comes in. I want you to think about getting with the folks at EnergizedHealth.com. They got a money-back guarantee, 99% success rate. So you're going to be in very, very good hands here. There's a master class on the website. All the testimonials, go through them, EnergizedHealth.com. If you're feeling like, hey, you know what? I want to be able to run around with my grandkids. I want to be able to run around better and throw the ball around with my kids. Energized Health is going to be for you. I'm going on vacation. I want to tighten it up. Or I know I'm going to be in Europe and I'm going to be walking and I got to get in shape. Energized Health can help you do that without killing yourself. EnergizedHealth.com. That's EnergizedHealth.com. You got to do me a favor on this. Make sure you tell them that Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right. So the White House sends me an email, and I'm going to read some of it to you, okay? This is a quote. Don't forget, America is the greatest country in the world. There's no reason why Washington, D.C. has to have a violent crime rate that is worse than some of the most violent places on earth. In 2024, Washington, D.C. had the fourth highest homicide rate in the United States, a homicide rate 6 times worse than New York City. Last month, a D.C. police commander was suspended for manipulating crime data to make it seem lower than it actually is. And so here's why he was doing that. The Democrats are going to tell you today, oh, the crime rate was falling. Well, no, it wasn't. Not after you start to see that they were rigging the numbers. Washington, D.C.'s homicide rate is also topped Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton. Now, we all know Chicago and Compton are homicide capitals. Atlanta, I know, is a dangerous place. I didn't think it ranked up there with them. But apparently, D.C. is even worse. Washington, D.C. has one of the highest robbery and murder rates among large U.S. cities nationwide, with numerous assaults and robberies. Congressional staffers have been robbed and assaulted. Members of Congress. In May, 2 embassy staffers were murdered. In June, a congressional intern was fatally shot just a short distance from the White House. And just days ago, Trump administration staffer was mercilessly beaten by a violent mob. That's big balls. The Doge staffer who tried to help stop a crime in progress, and he got his ass whooped. Violent theft in the district is over 3 times the national average, ranking it among the most dangerous cities globally. Repeated armed carjackings and violence by teenage gangs, including vicious filmed beatings on public transit. That, folks, all in Washington, D.C. This is why President Trump is taking over. Those bullet points directly provided to me by the White House just moments ago. This is my buddy Congressman Tim Burchett on with the Rav Sunrise crew.
I suspect it's going to be classic Donald Trump. He's going to follow through with what he said. I think with the homeless situation, I was a mayor in Knox County. And in Knox County, I can't speak for Washington, but half those folks half of them are mentally ill or are actually veterans. And it's really it's a mark on this country. We need to de-escalate. You need to demagnetize. You create programs for people that come in for free, but no, there's no credibility, no recognition, and it just gets overrun. And that's exactly what's happening. I want to remind you of something about Washington, D.C., how out of touch they are. And I like Mayor Bowser. She's a delightful lady, but I believe it's way over her head. When they sent a group of bureaucrats to speak to us in Congress about the crime situation, on that very day, in the middle of the day, a kid was carjacked right out near the Capitol. I remember he had a Jeep in broad daylight. And the thing that really ticked me off to show you how out of touch these bureaucrats are, I think they sent 6 white men there. And I said, maybe I'm the wrong person to be asking this dadgum question, but Washington, D.C. has got a lot of black folks, and I'm not seeing any black folks in this group. And they all shook there. Well, it was this, that, and the other thing. And as I walked out, my friend Kwasi Mafumi, who we don't agree on anything other than I like him, and he seems like a a good man, he complimented me on what I said. He said, "I'm so glad you brought that up because it just shows how out of touch the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. is with the reality." Those pictures you're showing or movies or whatever of the tents, that's everywhere in Washington, D.C. It was, coming from East Tennessee, I'd drive up there and all these tents. I mean, who are these people camping? They're homeless. It's just these huge camps right in and outside of the area. It's filthy. It's dangerous. It needs to be cleaned up. Donald J. Trump's following through with what he said. Washington, D.C., as Reagan said, needs to be a bright, shining city on a hill. It is not.
It's awful. And so, again, one thing I can say about Dallas is run by liberals. It's my home city. This is where I live. There are areas of Dallas that are very clean. I feel pretty safe, though, like any big city, it's not perfect. But you go into some other areas of Dallas and the blight, the squalor, the crime is infested. It's bad. And many people in the city don't see it. That I would call the hood. We have an area called Pleasant Grove, which every big city has hoods, right? You get it. But it's as if the liberals could care less about these areas, to do nothing to either fix these areas up, give people a reason to live, right? Instead, they're so beat down. It's like this burgeoning underclass. You got kids going to sleep hearing gunshots at night, wondering if their big brother or big sister is going to come back because of the amount of violence in the hood. That's just wrong. And in D.C., that most certainly is one of those places. This was this morning on Fox News, talking about the federal takeover and Big Balls and what happened to him. So take a look.
The 19-year-old former DOJ staffer known as Big Balls was beaten by a violent mob of minors in the nation's capital in a popular part of town, according to police. A 15-year-old man and a 15-year-old woman were arrested and charged with unarmed carjacking. The attack prompted President Trump to post, "Crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youths and gang members, some only 14, 15, and 16 years old, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens. The most recent victim was beaten mercilessly by local thugs." Trump warned if crime is not dealt with properly, he may be forced to take over.
Somebody from DOJ was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Now, this summer, Edward Korestein, the former DOJ lieutenant known as Big Ball, spoke to our own Jesse Waters. Elon Musk reacting to the attack on his platform X, saying, quote, "A few days ago, a gang of about a dozen young men tried to assault a woman in her car at night in D.C. A DOJ team member saw what was happening, ran to defend her, and was severely beaten to the point of concussion. But he saved her. It's time to federalize D.C."
You see the difference between conservatives and liberals? Remember the Cincinnati attack, the black mob that attacked those white folks on the streets of Cincinnati during that jazz festival? Nobody did anything. One person out of a mob called 911. Here you got this kid. I don't know why they don't call him by his real name. I don't even know his real name. Big Balls. Apparently I got anchors on all the networks literally referring to him as Big Balls, which is pretty hilarious. But Big Balls had big balls. And he ran to stop a carjacking in progress and got his ass whooped. But God bless him, because he stepped in to do something to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. You don't see that from those on the left. When was the last time you heard of a Democrat stepping in? Instead, they're screaming and yelling, taking video, posting it on social media while someone is beat down, maimed, and almost killed. The president in his news conference mentioned that a little girl was shot in the head while sitting in her car. The father of that little girl responded by the prospect of the feds taking over D.C.
But likes the idea of having more federal agents on the street.
The mayor seems not to have enough control of the activities that are arising.
So the mayor doesn't have any control. But why do they not have control? It's just because they didn't take control. And that's all it is. They don't take control because they fear they're going to offend their base. Now, who is their base? In D.C., typically, it's the minority community. I mean, all of D.C. is their base. Most people who live in D.C. that's not their base are there because they're members of Congress, they're staffers, they're in, and they go back home on recess, and it's a very in and out city. Lobbyists who live outside of D.C., inside D.C., but the base, mostly minorities, mostly Democrats, they don't want to offend them. But I think they're making a huge mistake because I think the grandma that lives in the horrible area, that's afraid for her grandkids' safety, that is tired of the drug dealing in her stairwell of her housing project, is saying, hey, don't worry about offending me. Let's offend the criminals by putting them behind bars. But the left just can't do it. They think they'll be accused of being racist because the reality is the majority of people that are going to be arrested in D.C. now are going to be black. Now, that's not a thing of color. It's just a thing of reality. The large majority of the population in D.C. is black. The large majority of the criminals that are committing crimes in D.C. are black. And so President Trump, again, is going to be accused of being racist. But here's what I can promise you. If the majority of people committing crimes were white mobs coming in from Bethesda, Maryland, those people would be arrested too. The bottom line is that's not what's happening, though. So Morning Joe Scarborough and Mika in her Mr. Rogers outfit, I guess. These people are so weird. Reacted to all of this as only they can.
First of all, here we have, again, the personalization of policy and politics. I mean, you don't federalize a city because a person you know got beaten up. I will say it has been, for me, a question that I've had for it's terrible what happened, and it happens every day in Washington, D.C., not just when it happens to somebody that Donald Trump knows.
So you see what he's doing? She says it's terrible it happened. We know Democrats have been attacked. Democrat staffers have been attacked. It's a dangerous place. These two know it's a dangerous place. So they want to slam President Trump. And they say, you don't take over a city. But remember, D.C. is different from every other city because it's controlled by the government of the United States. It is the government's responsibility to make sure D.C. is taken care of, okay? It's not a state. It's not a city in a state. It is the capital of the United States, and the federal government is in charge of D.C.
And I have wondered for years why the federal government that funds D.C. doesn't take a more active role in the safety and security of Washington, D.C. in a partnership. You know, Donald Trump is so worried about what's going on in Los Angeles. You don't have to bring out the National Guard. You don't have to bring out the Marines to make streets safer in cities. And they weren't needed out in Los Angeles.
They were needed in Los Angeles. I do radio in Los Angeles every day. And guess what? I do radio in Los Angeles every day. Where do you think I broadcast from? I broadcast from Dallas, Texas. Now, it's not a well-known deal in L.A., but the reason I broadcast from Dallas is I don't want to live in L.A. It's a hellhole. I refuse to move there. Now, if it was that beautiful city on the ocean, and there was no income tax and low regulations, and they were voting red, you think I'd move to L.A.? Hell yeah. Sounds nice to me. It's beautiful. California is beautiful. But liberals have ruined it. All right? Marxists have ruined that city. I won't live there. But I can tell you this from knowledge of everyday goings-on in L.A., because I'm doing it every day out there, they absolutely needed the National Guard. ICE agents needed the protection. So let's go to the Rumble chat. Ronnie Spot. In my area, we have a whole section of the city as we call the East Side, which apparently is not that bad. He's in Northern California. You know what I'm talking about. And there are certainly some conservative pockets of California. I want everyone out there to remember, this is why when I worked at the NRA, I always told the executive leadership, do not forget about California. Lots of gun owners, Lots of conservatives in California. In fact, more people voted for Trump in California than any other state in the country. They're just wildly outnumbered. Tiff Music. Democrats are like parents who are afraid to discipline their teenagers because they want to be their friends. They just end up losing control. Absolutely. I watched this from so many parents. My son just said he came back from a party Saturday night. The father said the beer is in the refrigerator. My son is 16 years old. My son told me he didn't drink. Do I believe him? I tend to, because he was driving that night. He was staying at his mom's house, but he was driving that night. My kid is a pretty straightforward kid. He did say he had a cigar. Okay. But he said there were kids that were drinking a lot that night, and the parents were fine with it. Just make sure you don't get out of control with the message from the parent. That would not be my message. There's no 16-year-olds coming to my house drinking. Not on my watch. No, I don't think it's appropriate. Now, I get you're 18 years old. You want to drink some beers. You can't. I totally understand where you're coming from. You don't think I did that? Of course. You don't think I had a fake ID? Of course. But it doesn't mean that I've got to condone it. It doesn't mean that I've got to, even worse than condoning it, is encouraging it and enabling it. So I tell my son, I don't know how we got off on this, but I tell my son, if you are going to drink, all right, and I can't stop you from drinking, you've got to Uber or call me. In any emergency, call me, no questions asked policy. All right, if you're in trouble, I will come get you, no questions asked, no matter where I am, and no matter how. And if I can't get there, I'll send somebody to get there, no questions asked, because I want him to have the freedom not to be so scared that he gets himself in more trouble. It's a fine line you got to walk, though. I'll tell you what, parenting ain't easy through all of this. It certainly isn't. All right, I want to talk about the redistricting fight and how hypocritical the left is. So the left, they have states. Where's my list of states? Here it is. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Mexico, Hawaii, Vermont, Rhode Island, Delaware, and almost New Jersey have 0 Republican lawmakers. Now, the percentage of Republicans in these states ranges anywhere from 27 to 36%. Yet they have 0 Republican lawmakers in Massachusetts and Connecticut. And Connecticut, not that long ago, had a Republican governor, John Rowland. He was a good governor, too. He went to prison, but he was a good governor. I know the guy personally. And it was pretty much a railroad job that he went to prison on. So those states have no Republican representation. Why? Because they're gerrymandered. These Democrats are out of control. Well, miraculously, the mainstream media put 2 governors on notice about that, calling them out on their gerrymandered states. I'm going to play that for you in just a moment. But before I do, let me tell you about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. PatriotMobile.com/Grant is where I want you to go. I have a Patriot Mobile phone. I've got 2 lines on this phone, okay? 2 different networks. So I've got Verizon and T-Mobile on this phone. So no matter what city I go to, I know I got a good signal. And also for business purposes, I get 2 numbers on here that come in, and I can tell which number's which, where they're calling from. It's great. Love it. The Patriot One plan. Ask them about it. But beyond that, I was invited, I'll just tell you, to go to the Jason Aldean concert this Thursday in Dallas. They're conservatives, invited by Patriot Mobile. They're one of the supporters of the Jason Aldean concert. They support Second Amendment issues, right to life issues. They're on the front lines when battling back against groups like Planned Parenthood. Every little bit they can, they're putting to conservative causes, and you can rest assured that a portion of the money they make from your cell phone bill goes to funding the right and pushing back against the left. So these are the reasons why I like Patriot Mobile, not to mention the 100% U.S.-based customer service, a performance guarantee. Switching is easy. They'll make you a deal to switch, so you're not going to be out of pocket any money on that front. So just go to patriotmobile.com/Grant. patriotmobile.com/grant. Sign up today, or you can call them. Switching is easy. It literally takes minutes with these new virtual SIM cards. 972-PATRIOT, 972-PATRIOT. You tell them that Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right. Redistricting. So, as I said, Democrat states, blue states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Mexico, Hawaii, Vermont, Rhode Island, Delaware, no Republican members of Congress when they have 27% to 36, 40% of the vote are Republicans, and they get no representation in these states, and they're going to get mad of a very red state like Texas redistricting, when in fact the census last time around in 2020 was flawed. It had bogus data, and it was flawed so badly that Democrats benefited. Now, was the flaw on purpose? I actually believe it was. I believe that Joe Biden and whoever was pulling his strings, Barack Obama, ordered this census to be flawed in order to pad the ranks, and they still lost. Okay? Well, they ended up losing in 2024. 2020, not so much. So all of this needs to be changed. We need to redo it. That's what Governor Abbott is doing in Texas, and I'm glad that he is. Now, as for the redistricting, I don't know if you've ever seen what districts look like in Illinois, and I'm not going to say that they don't look like this in Republican states, because I'm a big boy. I understand what redistricting is all about. It's a political game. If you're the party in power, you are going to want to put the advantage in your party's favor. There's nothing wrong with that. People can tell you, oh, you know what, it's unfair. No, screw that. I won the election, and I won it fair and square. We won the election. We won it fair and square. Texas is red. We're going to redistrict to favor Republicans. You know what? California's blue. They're going to redistrict to favor Democrats. They claim they have an independent commission. Bogus. Look at the districts in California. California, it's like 17% of the seats go to Republicans, not even. And they get literally 30-something% Republican in California. So they've redistricted in a fashion that is not fair to Republicans. Well, the governor of Illinois, who's been a harborer of these AWOL Democrats from Texas, got put on the hot seat by Kristen Welker at NBC, surprisingly.
Every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction. The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights is what Texas is attempting to do. That's what's wrong with their efforts right now. And the fact that the president of the United States knows it and nevertheless is asking them to do it. That is what's wrong with what we're seeing right now. Democracy is at stake.
Oh, stop with the democracy at stake. This is a Democrat line. You're going to hear it again from Eric Holder in a minute. Democracy is not at stake. And in fact, you're embracing what people voted for. Overwhelmingly, the people of Texas put Republicans in charge of the state legislature. The state's legislature is charged with redistricting. If the people of Texas were so afraid that Texas was going to be redistricted into helping red Republicans, they wouldn't have voted for them. But they did. And the same goes for these blue states. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite like the Democrats are. They just realize they're losing on this front. So in the end, Republicans in Texas need to get this done. Now, as of today, they were given a Friday deadline. I don't think any offices have been vacated. I don't think anybody's been arrested yet. We were told they would be on Friday. So I'm looking at you, Greg Abbott. Even my friend Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. I'm certainly looking at the Speaker of the House, Dustin Burrows. Where are the arrests? Where are the vacated seats? I don't even think Dustin Burrows has taken away parking spots, much less committee assignments from these Democrats who are on the run. You want to hit home, start taking things, little perks away from them. Strip them of their committee assignments. Strip them of their parking spaces. Oh, he made us have to pick up their checks. Do you know what the salary of a lawmaker is in Texas for a year? $7,600. $7,600. You think they're going to miss their paycheck? Their weekly paycheck of a few $100s? No, they're not. Now, they get $210 per diem a day. That helps them. But, you know, they've got to have a place in Austin and all that stuff. It's not a lot of money they're making. And that's the only thing you do is, hey, you got to come back and pick up your checks. When Democrats are flooding the zone with money, you got Soros PACs that are flooding money in, and they should be brought up on bribery charges. I've said this over and over again. If you are going to take money to go flee to California and take a vacation not to vote, you just accepted a bribe. No doubt about it. Now, it wasn't only Pritzker that got confronted. Shannon Bream on Fox confronted Kathy Hochul on basically the same thing.
That's how National Review summarized it. They said it was only 3 years ago that New York's Democratic legislature drew up a map so brazenly contemptuous of basic rules that govern a district's contiguousness that the state's Democrat-dominated Court of Appeals threw it out. The New York Times at the time called those maps comically contorted. That's their quote. So your state's highest court at the time, all the judges appointed by Democratic governors, they threw the maps out. So fair to say Democrats have done what they're now accusing Republicans of doing.
Wait till you hear her answer. Her answer is so bad. It's childlike, okay? Frustration and childlessness. Frustration and acting like a child on display. Here's Kathy Hochul.
No, we followed the rules. We do it every 10 years. We base it on census.
But the court said you didn't follow the rules.
Well, we did follow the rules.
So the court was wrong?
Well, we followed the rules.
We followed the rules. We followed the rules. Well, the court said you didn't follow the rules. And this happened in Texas, too, by the way, to be fair to Kathy Hochul. When I was running for Congress in 2011 for the 2012 race, they redistricted the maps from 2010. Redistricting happens. Those maps were thrown out. They were then redone over and over again. It was a nightmare running for Congress while redistricting was going on. So this happens everywhere. But by the way, it's why we have courts to look at these things, and everything balances back out. So let's all be grown-ups about it. If I'm in a state that is deep red Republican, you better believe I'm going to do everything I can to make the districts deep red Republican. They won't admit this. At all. And quite frankly, it is frustrating. Eric Holder on this.
Let me ask you, how can gerrymandering both be a threat to democracy and also the way to save it?
Well, there's no question that gerrymandering is a threat to our democracy. It allows politicians to pick their voters as opposed to citizens choosing their representatives. But we are now in a situation where we find ourselves where authoritarian moves are being made by the White House through various states, Texas most prominent among them. And there has to...
Do you see all they have are buzzwords? Threat to democracy, authoritarian moves. Now, I get that Republicans use buzzwords too. Marxist, tyrannical, all these things. Our words happen to be true. Theirs aren't.
Be a response to that. What I've said is that we have to protect our democracy now if we ultimately want to be able to save it. And so taking the reasonable steps that have been proposed in California, I think it makes a great deal of sense in this moment, a temporary way in which to respond to that which is happening in Texas, with the thought that after this crisis has passed, we get back to the fight against gerrymandering by...
See, it's a crisis for Democrats because they realize what's going to happen. Texas is going to do what every other Democrat state has done. Brian Harrison's a frequent contributor on my show on Real America's Voice. I think we were one of the first that found him. He's probably the most conservative member of the Texas state legislature right now. He went on with my buddy Steve Bannon to talk about the hypocrisy of the left and what's going on in the state legislature and how this could have all been prevented. You know, Dustin Burrows gets help from Democrats to get elected. I worry he may have made a deal with Democrats, though he seems like he's being tough on them now. Again, no committee assignments gone, no parking spaces even taken away from them. But This is Brian Harrison on with Steve Bannon.
It's great to be with you, but I'm kind of upset at you. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get back the brain cells you made me lose by listening to that MSNBC panel right before I came on here, okay? And, like, I got to say something about that, okay? I pulled some numbers here because they're talking about this extreme gerrymandering. They're so mad in Texas. And one of these morons on MSNBC actually said, well, the congressional map should be mirror sort of the voting percentages in the state. So I pulled the numbers while he was talking here. Read this real quick. California, Republicans make up 40% of the vote. They get 17% of the seats because they never talk about it when the Democrats do this. Never a word. It's only Republicans. Okay, Massachusetts, Republicans make up 35% of the vote. They get 0 congressional representation. Connecticut, Republicans are 38%. They get 0 seats. New York, 42% of the vote is Republican. They get 26 seats, percentage of the seats. Maryland, Republicans are 38% of the vote. Republicans get 12% of the seats. New Mexico, 44% of the vote's Republican. 0 congressional seats. I could go on for pages here. Okay, so like America needs to know. Hang
on. I just brought it. Yeah, I just brought up with DeGrasse all of New England.
Yeah,
all the states. I think the average is 40%, 38 to 40% of Republicans. There's not one Republican in the entire congressional delegation of the entire New England.
That's nuts. And again, outrageously unfair. So what do we do about it? Well, you take the states where you can do something about it, and you do it right now, and you do it quickly. Texas is great to be set up for this, and I'll tell you why. It's so big, the landmass. Now, the areas that are deep red are rural, so there's not a lot of people. So you have to draw these big, giant districts to take into account for San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, El Paso, all very blue areas. And you've got to split up those cities in quarters and then take in large swaths of the rural area so each new seat will get a little bit of a big city. So you break apart the big city district and get a huge area that runs, could run 100 miles because you got to take in a lot of people in order to make up for the people in the cities. Now, this is Maria Bartiromo talking to J.D. Vance about the redistricting situation.
So another crazy thing that I had no idea about, but everybody, even Democrats actually admit this, that the census in 2020 had a major statistical error. And what that meant is that you actually undercounted a few states that are Republican, like Florida and Ohio. You overcounted some blue states. And so what I understand, if you actually did the census anew right now, you would have 10 additional Republican seats and 9 fewer Democrat seats. And really what we're living with, Maria, is the consequence of 40 years of institutional control in the Democratic Party. These guys have fought very dirty for a very long time, and they haven't just won elections and enacted laws that we may not agree with. They have tried to rig the game for Democrats and against Republicans. And thankfully, under President Trump's leadership, you finally see some spine. You finally see some backbone in the Republican Party to fight back against these very aggressive Democratic dirty tricks. But the only way for us to do it is to actually go and do the hard work to reset the scales a little bit. What we want to do is redo the census, but importantly, we want to redistrict some of these red states, and we want to make the congressional apportionment fair in this country. Again, you cannot do it unless Republicans actually take some very decisive action in the months to come. We think they will, and we're obviously supporting them every step of the way.
But do you worry that as Republicans do that, the Democrat blue states are going to do the same thing, and then you'll have redistricting in California, New Jersey, and so on?
Maria, there's just not a whole lot of juice left out of that lemon. The Democrats have already gone as far as they possibly can. Let me give you a crazy statistic. So I believe that it's in New Jersey, Illinois, New York, California, and there's one other Democrat state where you take those 5 states, you have a large number of Democrat representatives. But here's the crazy statistic. President Trump won 43% of those 5 states, And Democrats have something like 85% of the representatives out of those states. You cannot gerrymander these far left states anymore. And that's the whole point. We have unilaterally disarmed in the Republican Party. We have said to the Democrats, if you want to rig the game in your favor in blue states, go ahead. We're going to do nothing to fight back against it. That's crazy. It makes it harder for us to pass our agenda. It makes it harder for us to win elections. And most importantly, it gives Democrats this ability to run roughshod over the country without any pushback from the American people. The democratic system in this country is broken because who you vote for doesn't necessarily get reflected in who your representatives are. We're just trying to rebalance the scales and, frankly, push back against a very unfair system created by the Democrats.
Well, I like J.D. Vance. It sounds very reasonable. And look, I've said for a long time, I don't care whether you're in a red state or a blue state. The bottom line is you don't pick who you want to be in Congress. They pick you. This whole redistricting plan, especially when you're an incumbent, in fact, when you're an incumbent, they pick what their district wants to look like during redistricting for the most part. They choose you. You don't choose them. And that is a broken system. But if it's the system we got, we better play to win. And I'm tired of Republicans not playing to win and rolling over for this stuff. We got to stop that and stop it in a big, big, big way. All right, folks, let me tell you about my friends over at the Wellness Company. I'm going to tell you firsthand right off the bat. I am now almost finished with my parasite cleanse. And I think this has one reason why I'm starting to feel better. My bloat has gone away. I had my stomach was starting to get bloated. Well, on the parasite cleanse, the bloat's going away. 60 million Americans apparently have parasites. This mebendazole and ivermectin combination is so great. Kills the parasites. All you got to do is get with the Wellness Company, and they will send a parasite cleanse out to you, sold out 3 times, folks. 3 times. Mebendazole, ivermectin, sold out 3 times because this stuff works. You don't want these parasites in your body. I mean, when you start to think about what that looks like, it's pretty darn disgusting. I saw a video of worms in grocery store food like this on your screen right here. You eat that, that parasite is now going to live in your body, in your brain, in your spine, wherever. The Wellness Company can get rid of that. Then don't forget these emergency medical kits. My buddy just used one. He was coming down with what he thought was strep throat. He had amoxicillin in here. He instantly started it. Got rid of that right away. No trip to the doctor. Used the little handy-dandy guidebook in there for which drugs used for which diseases, which viruses, and those types of things. Speed of delivery is the key. TWC.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. TWC.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT, and you are not going to regret it. So I told you we had the body language guy on Friday. I love my body language segment. And I wanted to show it to you. Greg Hartley, he was a military interrogator. And we go through some of it. Take a look.
Thanks, Grant. Always a pleasure.
All right, you ready to go through some of these? I'm gonna throw you our vice president first, talking about how he, too, is obsessed with UFOs. Let's roll that one.
Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing from last year. So,
Greg?
I love this one because remember we watched a couple of weeks ago the bad Kung Fu movie where the mouth and the hands did not line up. Watch this body language. Watch the congruency. When you do a polygraph, what you're doing is looking for all 3 of the signals to match. And what this guy's doing is his words, his cadence, everything he's doing, his illustrators, use of his hands to illustrate what he's saying, they all match. He's got a helpless face and body shrug when he's like, who knows? Then you notice that he goes into, his hands are all down around his waist, which my partner on the show, Mark, calls a truth plane. That's where people usually do. When he talks about the past, he does this. His cadence, his pitch, his tones, and his illustrators are all congruent. Even when he says, I'm going to do a deep dive, looks true, looks believable. It's all consistent.
All right. You've told me before when you do that move with your hands down below to that you're protecting yourself from something. Is that different than the truth plane?
Yeah, so truth plane, when Mark talks about truth plane, he talks about you talking around waist level other than putting your hands in your lap. He's just folding his hands in his lap. Protection of the fig leaf nature is when you stand up and you put your hands and you cup them as a barrier. He's just relaxed and folding his hands. But he comes up and speaks with his hands from there and then goes back to it. So he looks pretty consistent and pretty congruent to me.
All right, let's play Tulsi Gabbard because, in my opinion, she gave all but an admission that she saw something in these UFO files that's interesting. So let's play that clip.
Anything in the files that you think you could find or you have found?
Nothing that I'm prepared to talk about today.
So watch this space.
Say what?
Watch this space.
We are I'm just going to say this. We're continuing to look for the truth and share that truth with the American people.
Greg, I can't wait to hear what you say about this.
Well, I love this one because if you watch her normal speaking style, her normal baseline we talk about, she breaks eye contact to way down and to her right when she's looking away from somebody. And she does about 50-50. She does that here. The other thing that she usually does when she's trying to persuade you, however, is a short head stroke, nod, combined with a brow up and looking you in the eyes. She doesn't do that here. She's not trying to convince you of anything. She does exactly another congruent message. She sits back, braces her hands on her knees with a big smile. That's a blocking maneuver. And her eyes drop down to her left after she breaks eye contact. And her cadence stops and starts to go very slowly as she navigates the right language. And then even her fingers mill a little bit in adapting. So I agree with you. I think there might be something she knows that she's not prepared to talk about at this time. That's what the message says. She's not trying to persuade you at all. She's just simply saying it. Looks promising.
Is there nervousness involved in this?
No, I think the only nervousness I see at all is that milling of the hands. She's braced her hands on her knees because she came knowing what she's going to say if she's asked that question. So you can see that her hands come up and she illustrates a bit even at that, but not a lot of nervousness. That smile is pretty characteristic for her when she's pushing people to the side. And I think the slowing of the cadence is the best indicator. She's trying to make sure she says the right words. And by the way, does not answer the question about what's in the files. She avoids the question.
Yeah, well, she knows whatever it is, it's classified. She'd be in big trouble if she did.
Exactly.
Interesting stuff to say the least. All right, let's go a little more serious now. Bibi Netanyahu made an admission that they are going to take over Gaza in an effort to help Gazans and save them from Hamas. I'm not sure the Gazans are going to be so happy about that, but I want to play Bibi and get your take on his body language.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza.
What do you make of it, Greg?
Yeah, I love this one because when he starts, it's more congruency, congruent message, congruent body language. Watch that hand when he's asked the question, quickly tap. That means he's prepared for the question. He's been at this a long time. He's got a lot of body language that he's used over and over and over and been successful with. But if you watch, his body is saying what his mouth is saying. We want to be free and we want them to be free. We want Hamas out. You see what he's doing? His body is saying exactly the same thing. He, however, is concerned about how it's perceived, likely because if you see his forehead up, that's a request for approval, and that's waiting to see how you respond. You can see it in big scale on a guy who's older and whose face is a little more saggy.
I believe outside is a whole slew of protesters, so he's up against that as well. Yep. This guy he's been around for as long as I can remember. Let me play one more clip because I guess my question will be after we play this one is, when you are such a seasoned politician and so experienced, does it become harder to read it, or are they adept at not giving clues to what they're saying? Let me play this, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit with the next one.
New York Times puts out a major story on the front page, a Palestinian mother holding a child, starved supposedly, and then it turns out that that child has cerebral palsy. It's a congenital disease. He has a brother who's well-fed. Family is well-fed. But it's...
What do you make?
Well, yeah. So you asked the question, do politicians get better? Of course. If you think back to Joe and doing the come on, man, and the now look, those are his two styles. He's been at this for a long time. But look at his body language as he defines something. He's illustrating with his hands. He's asking you for belief as you do it. I think he believes. Now, we can't ever tell what's true and what isn't when we're getting both sides. But look at the animation in a guy his age when he's pushing forward. Clearly, he believes what he's saying.
All right. Interesting stuff, because him of all people knows this messaging, I mean, has world ramifications, Greg.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And look, every time these guys feel stressed the same way we do, they just get better at masking that stress, Grant. Just like you have less. Imagine if you had stage fright, how you'd feel doing what you do. The same thing with these guys. They get batted in the face 50 times, and then they get really good at taking the swat. So they still bleed information, though, when you watch them, because you can see his brow rise. You can see him asking for approval. You can see him illustrating. All those things that we all do as well. So if you can learn to message like a politician, but be honest, which most of them aren't, there's a big, powerful tool for you.
All right. Speaking of one who's not, we're almost up on a break, but I'm going to play him anyway. We like to analyze Gavin Newsom. We've done it before. This is him at a press conference defending the Texas Democrats who have fled the redistricting process in Texas. Here's Gavin Newsom.
I think and then at the end of the day, they understand what's at stake. I mean, we can sit on the sidelines. We can watch him roll back. I mean, they're not stopping with 5 in Texas. They're in Indiana. They're going to all these other states. We can sit there and we can be, stewards of, intellectual good government and just watch it all go away.
Greg?
Yeah. Well, we know him. We know his style. We know he flips off with one hand when he's saying something positive, something negative. He's appealing to his base, so he's got that telegraph of helplessness, cynicism with one brow raised as he does it, and then both shoulders up in helplessness. Look at his arms fall under their own weight. That's helplessness. He's sending a message. Look, we get it. We're all in this together. We've got to stick together. Yeah, I mean, that's his standard.
At least he wasn't rocking back and forth like he usually does, as much as
Axl Rose
he does.
Dance.
Yeah, right, exactly. Greg Hartley, it's always great having you on the program. I'm going to tell people how they can find your website. Thank you, my friend. All right. You can go to readbodylanguage.com. That's readbodylanguage.com. And don't forget Greg's YouTube show. It's great, by the way, the Behavior Panel. All right, so I love when Greg comes on the show. We do that every Friday. If you're not watching the Real America's Voice show, you need to be. We get into all this stuff. We go places where no other TV show goes. A lot like this, only, we're guest-driven in many respects on the Rav show, not so much here. We just kind of let it fly here and have some fun with all of you. With that, I totally appreciate all of you being here with me. That's going to do it for the show today. Remember, my website, GrantStinchfield.com. That's GrantStinchfield.com. On social media, Stinchfield1776 on just about every platform out there. If you can, give me a follow. For this video, no matter what platform you're on, like it, share it, copy, paste it, tweet it out. Do whatever you can to spread this message, because Stinchfield's Army rolls for one reason and one reason only, because you make it roll. Without all of you, Stinchfield's Army is nothing. Anyway, I appreciate all of you. We'll see you on the Rav Show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Real America's Voice. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.